Are you a basketball player that wants to be a leader for their team to help get the most out of your teammates? Well, today I'm going to share a story about a Division I player that I worked with as they were entering their senior year. They totally changed the way their teammates responded to them, and it helped them play better together on the court. They did this by implementing just one simple tip. Let's jump in and discuss. Welcome back to Hard Smart Together. I'm Coach Dave. I'm here every week to help you become a better basketball player by teaching about the mindset, basketball IQ, and fundamentals that are going to give you the edge to play better, to achieve your goals, and to enjoy the game even more. So I mentioned last week, March Madness was coming. March Madness is here. We are in the first weekend of games. There are so many games on, both on the women's side, on the men's side, tons of games to watch. I hope you're watching and enjoying the excitement of March Madness. If you're still playing in March Madness, good luck, enjoy it. It's the memories you're gonna have for the rest of your life. But if you're not playing in it, if you're watching, if you're a high school player, a grade school player, and you're getting to watch these games, remember what I mentioned last week, which these games are excellent opportunities to learn from. You can learn from game situations. You can learn from, player situations, plays made, plays not made, good basketball IQ, bad basketball IQ. So not only can you watch these games and enjoy them and be excited by them, I want you to use them as a learning tool because there's so much material out there to learn from. I know myself, I'm busy clipping out things left and right to work with players on because this is the time. There's so many games on, I'm like, I got to clip that out. I got to clip that out. There's an example of this. There's an example of that. So opportunity for you out there as a player, even if you're not clipping things out as you watch these games, use them as a learning tool. Today, we're going to talk about a leadership tip, as I mentioned, that I gave a player that I used to work with. And speaking of leadership, if you haven't already downloaded my checklist of 8 champion intangibles, I highly recommend it. These intangible skills are some of the things that you need to work on in order to be a leader for your team, in order to help your team get better. So both on and off the court. So I'll, as always, put the link below. It's simply go to hardsmarttogether.com/intangibles. Again, it's hardsmarttogether.com/intangibles. And like I've mentioned before, it's just a PDF. It's kind of in a checklist form of these 8 skills that you can work on and some tips on how to work on them, how to implement them as a good reminder of these things that you can work on in the off season, in the season, whenever. So I mentioned a story I wanted to share today about a player I used to work with when I was coaching at St. Mary's College, a Division I program in the WCC. And the story kind of starts before this player's senior season even started. And they, to this day, as they watch this and figure out who they were, which wouldn't be that difficult, they don't know about a preseason coaches meeting that was taking place at the end of the summer where we were all discussing how the season was going to go forward and the roles of different players. And as you know, on a college team, you're always recruiting in new players. We had some transfers. We had players that were kind of coming from their freshman and sophomore years and getting into sophomore, junior years and ready to take that next step in their career. We had recruits coming in that were, you're always trying to elevate your team with recruits. So we had some really talented recruits, freshmen coming in that were really going to contribute a lot to our team that season. And this player, they had been a starter their entire career. They had traditionally been one of the better players on the team. The team hadn't necessarily accomplished, the team goals that we had set forth. And this season, we had really high team goals. So what was the role of this player going to be? And as we were talking about each individual player, it was kind of discussed that, there might not be a starting spot for this player this year. And although they were anticipating being a captain, we just didn't see them as going to be a captain for this team. Didn't see those leadership skills that were going to have to be implemented in order to lead this team of incoming freshmen and transfers and so forth. And how is this player going to take that? How are they going to take on less of a role in their senior season? Because your senior season, you have these great expectations. But for the good of the team, for the good of the team goals, we needed them to take on a lesser role. Well, it was my job as the player development coach to work with this player particularly as we approach the season, in the preseason. So there was a number of things to work on with this player. They were a great shooter. So didn't have to work a lot on shooting, but they were a bit of a defensive liability. That was one of the challenges, was they were a defensive liability. So we needed to work on some defensive work, and they weren't much of a playmaker. They weren't great at creating opportunities for their teammates or creating opportunities for themselves, but they were a great player. Now, they had a great shooter. They had a lot of the elements of a high basketball IQ. They had some great elements, but also their relationship with their teammates. Their teammates definitely knew that they were a senior and that they were traditionally one of the better players on the team. And they were came from a good place, but they were hard on their teammates. They let their teammates know when their teammates made mistakes. And they didn't really take on those mistakes. So that gives you a idea of some of the things we had to work on. So as I'm starting individual workouts with this particular player and working with them in the off season, what did we work on? I just want to say, we worked on each one of these elements, both on and off the court, but where was the important time spent? So we worked on their defensive footwork and communication. We worked on the team's defensive strategy and how they needed to help implement our defensive schemes and what role they needed to take on the court in implementing those schemes. We worked on the playmaking skills of making themselves more dangerous on offense and creating for their teammates as well as creating for themselves. So we did a lot of on-court work. But I believe that by far the most important time we spent during that preseason was before and after on-court work. So what did we talk about during those times? We talked about mindset, and we talked about their relationships with their teammates, and we talked about leadership skills. And there was one particular tip I gave them that they implemented wholeheartedly that I believe made a difference for them, made a difference for our team, and made a difference for our entire season. Just totally changed the dynamic. So what happened when the season started? Well, they did become a starter. They did become a captain. And we as a team competed in the WCC championship game against Gonzaga, which was that's what we had set as a goal, to compete for championships. And we got to the championship game. Unfortunately, we didn't beat Gonzaga that year. However, we got to the championship game, had that experience, for this player. So they achieve things that we didn't think in the preseason coaches meeting that they were going to achieve. So what is it that I contribute? Yes, there was a lot of on-court work, but what is that one tip I gave them that made such a big difference that I think changed the trajectory of their career and our entire team? That was simply to say 2 words. And those words were, my bad. Now, what do I mean by my bad? I mean, take responsibility for things that are happening on the court that are not necessarily your fault. Okay? My bad. And I'm going to use as an example, passing and catching. Because passing and catching, you've heard me talk about it in the past, is a huge part of the game that most people don't spend enough time working on. But it is a relationship between 2 players. And there's a communication level between 2 players. And so, before I gave this player this tip, a pass might be, they might make a pass, and it might be a great pass. First of all, a great pass gets caught. But it might be a really good pass that hit this player in the hands and wasn't caught. Maybe it was a turnover. In the past, this player would be like, come on, you got to catch that. You got to catch that. I put it right on your hands, right? But that just created a little bit of animosity in this relationship, right? It created a little bit of, you know, who are they to say I should have caught that? Maybe it was, they're thinking, oh, it was too hard, or it was in the wrong place, or I wasn't ready for it, or whatever the case might be. Now change that. My bad, I gotta make a better pass. No, you made a great pass. It hit me right in the hands. I gotta catch that. That's a totally different relationship in that scenario. Same on the other end. If somebody had passed the ball and it was 2 feet overhead, really couldn't be caught, but you take it on, my bad, I gotta catch that pass. No, I gotta make a better pass. Now you're on the same page because you both want that pass to be completed. The other thing is, if you give people a hard time about making passes, that was too low, you got to give it to me in a better spot. That was too high, that was too hard, I wasn't ready for the pass. You don't take it on, especially as one of the better players on the team. Let me tell you something. They're going to think twice the next time they're passing the ball, and they got a choice between people to pass it to. You're not going to get that pass. Somebody else is going to get that pass. Somebody that doesn't give them a hard time about making a bad pass. But you say, my bad, I got to catch that pass. And all they're thinking is, whether they verbalize it or not, man, I got to make a better pass next time. Next time, I got to hit them. I'm not going to let that happen again. It's not flying 2 feet over their head or too low. I'm going to make a better pass. Now, everybody's on the same page of getting better. The same thing can apply on defense. I got to stay in front of my player. I got to be better help. I got to communicate with you better. I got to call out the screen. My bad. You take things on with my bad, totally changes your relationship with your teammates on the court and gets everybody on the same page. It's like any kind of argument. If you blame somebody for something or give them a hard time for something, it's going to be a little adversarial. And you got to think to yourself, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? And great leaders are trying to be effective. They're trying to make their teammates better. Whether you're the star on your team, this is a great tip for stars, but if you're the star on your team or you're a role player or you're just a practice player, you implement this tip, it will be contagious around your team. You get people all over the place. My bad, no, my bad, no, my bad. And when people are like willing to take on the responsibility of bad plays, and that just elevates the team, okay? You start playing the blame game. Give me a better pass, get it to me in a better spot. You got to be my help. Why didn't you call off the screen? You start playing the blame game, and that creates adversarial relationships both on and off the court, and it doesn't elevate the team. So I truly believe all the work that we did defensively, offensively, on the court, everything that we did, the one tip that made the difference for this player was implement my bad. And they wholeheartedly went back and did it. We ended up having a great preseason. We ended up having a great season. And as I mentioned, we competed for a championship, and they got all these, personal accolades, being a leader on the team, a captain on the team, a starter, an integral part of everything that we did. When, as coaches, we were sitting around at the beginning going, diminished role, not going to be a starter, not going to be a captain. How are they going to take on this role? One change, a change of an approach, made all the difference in the world. And that's what I want you to do for your team. Whether you're doing it now or not, do it more if you're doing it. But if you're not doing it, see how it works. See the different, how your teammates approach you after this. See how it makes your team better. Start taking on responsibility for bad plays, for bad passes, for bad catches, for turnovers. My bad. See how everybody wants to play harder for you. See how everybody wants to elevate their game. I'm not going to make that mistake again. Because I know deep down that was my bad. Maybe if you're arguing about whose bad it is, you're in a good place instead of taking it on. No, that was my bad pass. No, that was my bad catch. No, that's a much better place than you got to catch that ball. You got to pass it better. Back and forth, right? So that is a great tip for you. You can become a leader for your team. Doesn't matter if you're a star or a bench player. You can elevate the game of your teammates with that one simple tip. Learn from this player's experience, from my story, and implement it for you out there. Implement it during the summer, during your AAU program. Implement it when you play open gym. Implement it with your team. Implement this tip, and it will make a difference for you from a role on your team, from a leadership role on your team. So, as always, I want to thank you for joining me today. I want to thank you for the likes. I want to thank you for forwarding this to somebody that maybe needs to hear it. Maybe a teammate, maybe a coach, whoever, your whole team, forward it to those that need to hear it. And I'd love to hear any comments below on, have you tried this in the past? Is this something that you've seen affect your team in a positive fashion? And if so, share that story below. Ask me any questions that you'd like below, and I'll be happy to jump in and answer them as well. And until next week, remember to play hard, play smart, and most importantly, play together. I'll see you next week.